Romance manga. I'm not the biggest fan of the genre, but I've been starting to read it more over the past year, and I've enjoyed them, but none of them have left me amazed or was like something that would stay with me after I finished it. The best I had read prior to the manga I will be talking about in this video is The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity, which by all means is a great read and you should try it. For me, I just find them a bit slow and predictable, like every single one has got a fireworks scene at a festival and a beach chapter. Most romance manga just feel like the same story repeated over and over with very little variation. This is why I think I tend to gravitate towards romance stories that are a bit different and faster paced, like Nezumi's First Love or Assassin and Cinderella. They are darker and more adult, which I like just a bit more. Veil by Kotteri is without question the best romance manga I've read, and is also the most unique. It is a full colour story that is drawn beautifully with gorgeous art sprinkled throughout. It is a story that explores the relationship between Emma, a blind woman who leaves her affluent background to see the world, and Alexander, a police officer who guides her through the world. In today's video, I'll explain the basics of the story, only spoiling the first 2 chapters, which isn't much as the chapters in this manga are at most 10 pages. I will then talk about the way the story is told, and talk about Emma and Alexander's dynamic, and finish the story off by talking about the art. Okay, now to the video. The prologue opens with the chapter cover of a slim hand holding a walking stick. Every chapter has a beautifully drawn chapter cover, and I'll be using some of them for the backgrounds in this video. Now to the story. Veil begins with someone walking with a cane. Someone else is sitting on the floor, complaining about something being open. We see the cane come into view of the person sitting, and they collide. The woman apologizes for bumping into the man, and his expression quickly softens. This is Emma and Alexander. Alexander stands up, and Emma says, "That's why I don't like sticks." He notices she hasn't opened her eyes once. Alexander tells her it's no problem and asks if she's okay. You can see as he starts talking, after standing up, her head is still facing the ground. She now looks up, saying that she heard a voice coming from the ground, and now it's coming from above. "You're tall, really tall." Their chat is interrupted by some kids calling out to Alexander, telling the copper to put his hands up. The man puts his hands up and tells them that he has nothing today, but they find some sweets on him and take them. It's clearly a little game they play. As the kids leave, he yells out that they are supposed to look both ways before crossing the road. Emma is amused by this. He asks if they robbed her as well, and she says that she doesn't think so. "So you're a policeman?" she asks. He asks how she could guess, and she responds with, "Intuition, probably." He hands her his police hat and says this should be all the proof she needs. Emma then says she has actual papers as well, and hands them to him. Alexander is surprised. She has come from a long way. He also says it's the first time he's seen someone who keeps their eyes closed. She responds saying she's never seen anyone else at all, confirming she's blind. She begins walking towards some stairs, and Alexander tells her to be careful on them. Emma then tells him there's no need to worry. He follows her, asking if she's alone and if there's anyone that can accompany her. Clearly, he's worried about her traversing the city blind. She once again tells him that she's fine by herself and to please not worry about her. "And let me warn you now, following me won't lead you to Wonderland." Alexander is surprised by her saying that, but quickly responds with, "Do I look like Alice to you?" This gets her to laugh, saying maybe he does, and not to be upset. That's her favourite story. He's pleased that he made her laugh. He then says, "Maybe you're right. Earlier today I almost fell down a hole. A manhole was left open and I was looking elsewhere." He's playing on her calling him Alice from Alice in Wonderland. "That's why you were sitting down?" she asks. "When the rabbit bumped into me," he replied while walking up the steps towards her. "Now I'm left wondering where that rabbit is off to," he says with a smile. Emma thinks for a moment and tells him she was planning on going out for tea. She asks him if he would know where a nice shop is around here. Alexander tells her that at the police station he works at, she could get some tea. He tells her about the quality of blends they offer in the kitchen. Alexander smirks and tells her that they even have a room for lost children. Emma gets angry at this and tells him that she's not a lost child and is looking for work. They go back and forth, and Alexander apologizes and tells her that his police section is looking for someone to take calls. She asks if he thinks she's qualified for the job. Alexander then says that she might as well give it a shot, and he hopes she won't get too bored. Emma says, "Don't fret about it, it can't be worse than staying home." Alexander begins to give Emma directions, but she cuts him off and asks him to lend her his arm. They leave heading towards the police station, and she asks him to watch out for holes. Alexander says, "Certainly." Well, that's the first chapter, and this is one of the longer ones. Like the very next chapter is literally 2 pages. But if this story has piqued your interest and you want to avoid spoilers, then click off now. But this manga isn't one whole story, it's like a collection of vignettes that are short snippets into the lives and how they interact with each other. but if you want to experience it for yourself, then click off now. I'll now be talking about how their relationship is portrayed and the gorgeous art throughout the series. The way Emma and Alexander's story and relationship is conveyed throughout the manga is probably my favourite aspect of Veil, and in this part of the video I'm going to detail some of those scenes I found really enjoyable, as well as talking a little bit more about Emma and Alexander's relationship. Firstly, their monologues. Every 20 chapters or so we get a monologue from one of the characters, and they are usually centered around the events of one of the chapters. The two monologues I'll be showing are of Emma and Alexander reflecting on their first meeting together. I'll start with Alexander's monologue. He talks about her first phone call when she joined the police station. It was about a missing cat, the owner couldn't find it. Alexander remembers how truly sorry Emma was that she couldn't find the cat herself. The cat didn't come back, and Alexander would often notice it wandering around. He talks about how when you get a taste of freedom, you want to have it forever, referring to the cat's newfound freedom. He then says the same goes for Emma since she stopped using her cane. Alexander then says how he has never let her out of his sights, it's too dangerous. He worries she may get lost or bump into something. He then begins talking about when he told her his station is looking for someone to take calls. He mentions various things like asking her family to come get her, but she refused him tooth and nail. Then at the end of the monologue, he mentions that in the beginning of their relationship, he was like her bodyguard, escorting her around, but only in the beginning. I really like that the author hinted at more there, and it just made me more interested to keep reading. Now onto Emma's monologue from their first meeting. It starts with her remembering to phone home when she's rested. She thinks back on a conversation she had with one of her sisters. If you're able to leave, don't let us stop you, her sister told her. This refers to her leaving her old life behind, and a few lines later mentions servants doing everything for her. She remembers always being told not to go somewhere because it's dangerous, but now she enjoys having no one to tell her what's beautiful and what to do. In a piece of art later in the series, we get the line, "She grew up fed with a silver spoon." This, along with the mention of servants, makes me believe that Emma comes from an affluent background. Anyway, the next couple of lines cover her bumping into Alexander. "Thankfully you ran into me, but you shouldn't follow the first person you stumble into," Alexander said. "My, he shouldn't worry, I have good ears." I like these little scenes and snippets into the moments we get to see through their monologues. She mentions how she heard a voice coming from the ground and now coming from the sky. She then adds how she could tell he was a smoker from the tobacco smell on his arm. We see Alexander smoking throughout the manga, but in the first chapter we don't see him smoke, so it's a cool mention we get from Emma and adds more character to herself and Alexander, at least I think so. It shows how perceptive she is with her nose and Alexander's smoking habit. She mentions that he must have guessed that I didn't know where I was going. She had enough driving around and she wanted to walk for a bit. This line to me hints that she's clearly been driven around a lot in her life and has not enjoyed long walks or adventures. Throughout Veil we get these monologues that add more detail and layers to our two main characters. Another cool way the author adds more detail to the story is personification. Throughout the story, inanimate objects comment on Emma and Alexander's relationship. I won't spoil what they say, but in Veil we hear conversations between an empty cup in a teapot, stairs, and a chandelier, among other things. These are poetic and give more charm to the story, and I find them very cute. Emma and Alexander's relationship is difficult to explain, as they are never overtly romantic, but their actions teeter well past platonic, and the author himself addresses this. The author mentions how he often gets asked what's the nature of Emma and Alexander's relationship. He highlights some of their characteristics, like how Emma views the world by tactile sensations and her blindness makes her view on distance and intimacy different from most people. Alexander keeps watch over the purity of his attitude, his shamelessness, and his lack of restraint. All of this makes it so the temperature of their relationship doesn't fit into the category of friendship or love. To be precise, it's like an extremely fine veil was raised between them. This hints at their relationship being something in between platonic and romantic. This is where the title comes from, but for me at least, I think as you read through this story, that veil begins to slowly fall away, and after the latest chapter, I think they are moving closer to a romantic relationship than a platonic friendship, but that's just what I think, and that's by no way fact. I love their dynamic and the various chapters that highlight their affection for each other and how they interact with one another. For me, this story feels like I'm reading someone's dream or someone's favourite memories from someone, with the wonderful art and short vignettes. There's so many chapters that I liked and had scenes I really enjoyed, like chapter 9 when they are attending a party arranged by the police chief. Emma asks how many people are here and Alexander replies that it would take him all morning to count. The conversation continues until Alexander gets up for some reason. As he's gone, you can see Emma become more uncomfortable from all the noise. She quickly smiles when Alexander returns. He asks if she would like to go somewhere calmer and she agrees. Emma then asks if they can walk home. Alexander goes to tell her no, but quickly changes his mind and says he will get the car another day. Emma apologizes, but Alexander responds saying that he wants to go home on foot as well. I think this chapter highlights how he looks out for her and notices she was growing uncomfortable from all the noise, which for her is how she would see, and in a loud room it would be like total darkness. This story is filled with cute little interactions like this, and it's just really enjoyable to read, and there's a lot better moments than this, but I won't spoil. Now the art, and oh my god, it's amazing. I've already mentioned that the manga is completely coloured, but it's how the author uses it that I adore. Like in these panels, the light blue portrays a nice and cool night and sets the mood and temperature of the scene lovely. You get a feel for the night and the drowsiness of Emma and Alexander as they chat before bed. Now in contrast, we get this scene of Alexander and Emma talking while he bathes, and the steam and warm colouring conveys the heat in the room. The colours used are so vibrant and telling. The author uses colour a lot to convey certain moods and times. It's really cool to see. Whether it's them running through a moonlit museum or them gazing at the stars, the colour always conveys the tone perfectly. Now, I love the panel layouts being drawn instead of the typical straight lines that you see in most manga. I will say it's been annoying to crop out though, but it's all good. It adds a nice touch to the story. At the end of each chapter, there is always a piece of art of Emma or Alexander, or sometimes an item that was important to the chapter. And the art is gorgeous, and it's amazing how much variety the author has. They can draw in so many different styles, it's really cool to see. Also, if you haven't guessed by now, they love fashion with all the stylish outfits Alexander and Emma in particular wear. I think he and Hirohiko Araki would be great friends. Each chapter cover is also very stylish. This manga as a whole has a ton of artwork, so if you want a new profile pic or wallpaper, this manga would definitely help. This video could have been 2 hours long with how dense it is with character and nuance, which is incredible for something that is maybe 4 pages a chapter. I don't want to spoil any more, so I hope that I've convinced some of you to try this absolute gem of a manga. And it's something any romance lover should read. Emma and Alexander's story is definitely something I'll be waiting to see finished, and hopefully they get a nice end to their story. Well, that's it from me. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!